They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I prefer mine scorching hot with a side of public humiliation. The morning I watched Marcus Blackwood present my revolutionary marketing algorithm to the board of directors, claiming it as his own brilliant innovation, I knew exactly what I had to do. What he didn't know was that I had been recording every conversation, saving every email, and building a case that would bring down his entire empire. My name is Amelia Brooks, and I'm about to tell you how I destroyed the most powerful CEO in the city using nothing but his own greed and stupidity. 3 months ago, I was just another ambitious marketing analyst at Meridian Dynamics, one of those glass tower corporations that pretends to care about innovation while systematically crushing anyone who actually tries to innovate. I had been working there for 2 years, watching mediocre ideas get promoted while my proposals gathered dust in someone's inbox. But this time was different. This time, I had created something that would revolutionize how companies understood consumer behavior. The algorithm I developed could predict purchasing patterns with 94% accuracy by analyzing social media micro-expressions and cross-referencing them with economic indicators. It was groundbreaking work that I had spent 18 months perfecting, often staying until midnight in my cramped cubicle, fueled by terrible coffee and the desperate hope that someone would finally recognize my potential. I should have known better than to trust Marcus Blackwood. Marcus was the kind of CEO who wore $1,000 suits and smiled like a shark sensing blood in the water. He had built Meridian Dynamics from a small consulting firm into a multinational powerhouse, but rumor had it he hadn't had an original idea in over a decade. He was a collector of other people's brilliance, packaging it up with his silver tongue and taking all the credit. When I first presented my algorithm to the senior marketing team, I could see the hunger in Marcus's eyes. He asked detailed questions, took copious notes, and praised my innovative thinking with the kind of enthusiasm that should have been a red flag. He scheduled a private meeting with me the following week, claiming he wanted to discuss expanding the project's scope. That meeting changed everything. "Amelia," Marcus said, gesturing for me to sit in one of the leather chairs across from his massive mahogany desk. "I've been thinking about your algorithm, and I believe it has tremendous potential. However, I'm concerned about the current economic climate and how the board might react to such a significant investment." I leaned forward, eager to address his concerns. "I understand the hesitation, but the projected ROI is substantial. If we implement this correctly, we could increase client retention by 40% and attract major new accounts." Marcus nodded thoughtfully, steepling his fingers. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. I have a proposition for you. What if we developed this as a joint project? Your technical expertise combined with my business acumen and industry connections could make this truly extraordinary." The way he said joint project should have made me suspicious, but I was too excited by the possibility of finally getting the recognition I deserved. We shook hands, and I foolishly believed I'd found a mentor who would help me climb the corporate ladder. Over the next 6 weeks, I worked harder than I had ever worked in my life. I refined the algorithm, created detailed implementation plans, and developed presentation materials that would convince even the most skeptical board member. Marcus scheduled regular check-ins, during which he would review my progress and offer what he called strategic guidance. I shared everything with him: every breakthrough, every obstacle, every innovative solution. I was so grateful for his attention and support that I didn't notice how he was systematically learning every aspect of my work. He asked me to send him copies of all my research, claiming he needed to stay informed for when we present to the board. The first warning sign came when Marcus suggested we delay the presentation by 2 weeks, then another week, then another. He claimed it was about timing and market conditions, but I was beginning to feel uneasy. When I asked about putting my name on the project documentation, he assured me that credit would be given where credit is due. I should have trusted my instincts. The morning of what I thought would be our joint presentation, Marcus called me into his office. He was pacing behind his desk, looking unusually agitated. "Amelia, I have some difficult news. The board has expressed concerns about having a junior analyst present such a significant project. They feel it might undermine confidence in the proposal." My stomach dropped. What are you saying? I'm saying that I'll be presenting the algorithm myself. You'll still receive full credit for the technical development, of course, but for the sake of the company's best interests, I need to be the face of this project. I stared at him in disbelief. Marcus, this is my work, my algorithm. I deserve to present it. His expression hardened. Amelia, you're a talented analyst, but you're not ready for this level of responsibility. The board expects a certain level of experience and gravitas. Trust me, this is better for everyone involved. I wanted to argue, to fight for what was rightfully mine, but I was still naive enough to believe that he would keep his word about giving me credit. I agreed to let him present, telling myself that recognition was more important than ego. I'll never forget the moment I realized how completely I had been betrayed. I wasn't invited to the board meeting. Of course, Marcus claimed it was a senior leadership-only session, but he assured me he would share all the details afterward. I spent the morning anxiously waiting in my cubicle, imagining the moment when the board would hear about my groundbreaking work. 2 hours later, I received an email from Marcus with the subject line, "Fantastic news." The algorithm had been approved for immediate implementation. The board was thrilled with the innovation and strategic thinking. They had authorized a budget of $12 million for the project launch and were considering expanding it to international markets. But as I read further, my blood turned to ice. There was no mention of my name anywhere in the email. No reference to my 18 months of research. No acknowledgement of my contribution. Instead, Marcus had written, "I'm pleased to announce that my latest innovation has been approved by the board. The Blackwood algorithm will revolutionize our approach to consumer behavior prediction." The Blackwood algorithm. He had named it after himself. I immediately marched to Marcus's office, but his assistant informed me that he was in meetings for the rest of the day. I sent him an urgent email demanding an explanation, but his response came back an hour later. "Let's discuss this tomorrow. I'm sure we can clear up any confusion." There was no confusion. Marcus Blackwood had stolen my work, my idea, my 18 months of life, and claimed it as his own creation. He had used my trust and ambition against me, manipulating me into handing over everything I had worked for. That night, I went home to my small apartment and did something I hadn't done since I was a child. I cried, not just tears of sadness, but tears of rage and humiliation. I had been so stupid, so trusting, so desperate for recognition that I had walked directly into his trap. But as I sat there on my couch, surrounded by tissues and empty takeout containers, something shifted inside me. The tears dried up, replaced by something colder and more dangerous. Marcus Blackwood thought he had won. But he had made one crucial mistake. He had underestimated me. I spent the next week playing the role of the defeated employee. I acted disappointed, but resigned, thanking Marcus for the learning experience and expressing my hope that I could contribute to the project's implementation. He bought it completely, even going so far as to offer me a small raise and a promotion to senior analyst. "I told you that credit would be given where credit is due," he said with that shark smile. "Your technical support has been invaluable to this project." Technical support, as if I had been nothing more than a glorified research assistant. What Marcus didn't know was that I had started documenting everything from the moment I first became suspicious. I had been secretly recording our conversations using a discreet app on my phone. I had saved every email, every draft, every piece of research that proved the algorithm was my creation. I'd even created a detailed timeline of the project's development, complete with timestamps and file metadata. But evidence alone wouldn't be enough to bring down someone like Marcus Blackwood. I needed a strategy that would expose him publicly and destroy his credibility beyond repair. I needed to be smart, patient, and absolutely ruthless. The first phase of my plan was to become indispensable to the project implementation. I volunteered to work overtime, took on additional responsibilities, and made myself the go-to person for any technical questions about the algorithm. Marcus was happy to let me do the work while he took credit for the results. During this time, I began reaching out to industry contacts, carefully planting seeds of doubt about the algorithm's true origins. I didn't make direct accusations, but I asked strategic questions that made people think. I attended networking events and conferences, positioning myself as an expert on consumer behavior prediction while subtly mentioning my collaboration with Marcus on recent projects. I also started building relationships with key journalists and industry analysts. I provided them with valuable insights and commentary on market trends, establishing myself as a credible source. I never mentioned my situation directly, but I was laying the groundwork for when I would need media allies. The second phase involved exploiting Marcus's ego and arrogance. I began feeding him ideas for how to expand the algorithm's capabilities. Suggestions that I knew were technically impossible or would lead to embarrassing failures. Marcus, who understood the business side but not the technical complexities, embraced these ideas enthusiastically. I watched with satisfaction as he made increasingly grandiose promises to clients and investors about the algorithm's capabilities. He claimed it could predict not just purchasing behavior, but employment trends, political outcomes, and even relationship compatibility. Each exaggerated claim was another nail in his coffin. The third phase was the most dangerous. I had to create a situation where Marcus would be forced to demonstrate the algorithm's capabilities in a public setting. Without my technical support, I planted the idea during a casual conversation about upcoming industry conferences. You know, Marcus, I said during one of our weekly progress meetings, the Digital Marketing Summit next month will be the perfect venue to showcase the algorithm. All the major players will be there, and it would really establish Meridian Dynamics as an industry leader. His eyes lit up. That's brilliant, Amelia. I'll reach out to the organizers immediately. Within a week, Marcus had secured a keynote speaking slot at the summit. He would be presenting the algorithm to an audience of over 3,000 marketing professionals, including journalists, competitors, and potential clients. It was exactly what I had hoped for. I spent the next 3 weeks preparing for the moment that would define both our careers. I created a presentation for Marcus that looked impressive, but contained subtle technical errors that would become apparent to anyone who actually understood the algorithm's methodology. I also reached out to my network of industry contacts, making sure that several technical experts would be in the audience. The morning of the summit, I called in sick. Marcus was annoyed but not concerned. He had presented the algorithm several times before and was confident in his abilities. What he didn't know was that I had been handling all the technical questions during those previous presentations, feeding him answers through carefully timed emails and text messages. I watched the keynote presentation from my apartment, live streaming it on my laptop while simultaneously monitoring social media reactions. Marcus looked polished and confident as he walked onto the stage, but I could see the subtle signs of nervousness in his gestures. The first half of his presentation went smoothly. He delivered his prepared remarks flawlessly, explaining the algorithm's basic principles and showing impressive-looking charts and graphs. The audience seemed engaged, and I began to worry that my plan might not work. Then came the question and answer session. Dr. Patricia Nelson, a renowned data scientist from Stanford, whom I had specifically invited to attend, raised her hand. Mr. Blackwood, I'm curious about the algorithm's handling of seasonal variance in consumer behavior. How does it account for the differential impact of holiday shopping patterns across demographic segments? It was a technical question that required deep understanding of the algorithm's methodology. Marcus's confident smile faltered slightly as he realized he had no idea how to answer. That's an excellent question, Dr. Nelson, he said. Buying time. The algorithm uses a sophisticated approach to seasonal variance that takes into account multiple demographic factors. It was a non-answer that fooled no one. Dr. Nelson pressed further. Could you walk us through the specific mathematical model used for this adjustment? Marcus's face was beginning to show signs of perspiration. Well, without getting too deeply into the technical weeds, I can say that it involves advanced statistical modeling and machine learning techniques. More non-answers. I could see the audience beginning to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Several people were whispering to their neighbors. Then James Morton, a journalist from Marketing Intelligence Weekly, stood up. Mr. Blackwood, there are some interesting parallels between your algorithm and work being done by researchers at MIT. Are you familiar with Dr. Singh's paper on behavioral prediction models? This was beautiful. James was referring to a paper that had actually influenced my own research, something Marcus would have no knowledge of. I watched with growing satisfaction as Marcus stumbled through another vague response. The questions kept coming, each one more technical and specific than the last. Marcus's answers became increasingly desperate and nonsensical. He was clearly out of his depth, and everyone in the audience could see it. But the moment that truly destroyed him came when Dr. Nelson asked about the algorithm's accuracy metrics. Marcus confidently stated that the algorithm was 98% accurate, a figure he had apparently pulled out of thin air. That's interesting, Dr. Nelson said, consulting her notes. Because according to the preliminary data I've seen, the actual accuracy rate is closer to 94%. Are you using a different testing methodology? Marcus's face went pale. He had no idea what the actual accuracy rate was. And he certainly couldn't explain any testing methodology. He mumbled something about proprietary metrics and ongoing optimization. But the damage was done. The presentation ended with scattered, uncomfortable applause. Marcus left the stage looking like a man who had just watched his career implode in real time. But I wasn't finished with him yet. That evening, I published a detailed blog post on my personal website titled The Real Story Behind the Blackwood Algorithm. I laid out the complete timeline of the project's development, included screenshots of my original research files with timestamps, and provided audio recordings of Marcus admitting that the algorithm was based on my work. I also included a technical analysis that demonstrated the flaws in Marcus's keynote presentation, pointing out each error and explaining what the correct information should have been. It was a comprehensive takedown that left no doubt about who the real creator of the algorithm was. I sent the blog post to every journalist, industry analyst, and influential professional in my network. Within hours, it was being shared across social media platforms and discussed in marketing forums around the world. The response was immediate and devastating for Marcus. Marketing Intelligence Weekly published a follow-up article titled The Blackwood Algorithm, a case study in corporate theft. Dr. Nelson wrote an op-ed for the Harvard Business Review questioning the ethics of idea appropriation in corporate America. Even the Wall Street Journal picked up the story, framing it as part of a broader discussion about workplace exploitation. Meridian Dynamics' stock price dropped 12% in the first week after the story broke. Major clients began questioning their contracts, and several high-profile partnerships were put on hold. The company's reputation for innovation and ethical leadership was in ruins. Marcus tried to control the damage by issuing a statement claiming that there had been a misunderstanding about the algorithm's development and that I had been properly credited for my contributions. But the evidence I had provided was too comprehensive and damning to be dismissed. The board of directors called an emergency meeting. Marcus was placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. Within 2 weeks, he had been terminated for violations of company policy and ethical standards. I was offered his position as interim CEO while the board searched for a permanent replacement. It was a stunning reversal of fortune that exceeded even my wildest expectations. My first act as interim CEO was to implement new policies protecting employee intellectual property and ensuring that credit for innovations would be properly attributed. I also established a whistleblower program that would allow employees to report cases of idea theft without fear of retaliation. My second act was to license the algorithm to 3 of Meridian Dynamics' competitors, generating significant revenue while simultaneously undermining the company's competitive advantage. If Marcus had treated me fairly, the algorithm would have remained proprietary. Instead, his greed had cost the company millions in potential profits. The industry response to my takeover was overwhelmingly positive. I was featured on the cover of Forbes as the CEO who fought back, and my story became a case study in business schools around the country. Speaking requests poured in from conferences and corporate events. But perhaps the most satisfying moment came 6 months later. When I ran into Marcus at a coffee shop near my office, He looked older, more tired, and was wearing a significantly less expensive suit. He had found work as a consultant for a small marketing firm, a dramatic fall from his previous position. "Amelia," he said, trying to force a smile. "Congratulations on your success. I always knew you had potential." I looked at him with the same cold expression I had perfected during our final confrontation. "Marcus, I want you to know that everything that happened to you was exactly what you deserved. You stole from me, you lied to me, and you underestimated me. I hope it was worth it." He opened his mouth to respond, but I had already turned and walked away. I had nothing more to say to him. As I sit in my corner office today, looking out at the city skyline, I reflect on the lessons I learned from my experience with Marcus Blackwood. Trust is a luxury that ambitious people can't afford. Revenge isn't just about getting even, it's about restoring balance to a world that often rewards the wrong people for the wrong reasons. The algorithm that Marcus tried to steal from me is now generating over $50 million in annual revenue for Meridian Dynamics. My name is on every patent, every licensing agreement, and every piece of marketing material. The Blackwood algorithm has been renamed the Brooks Innovation Platform, and it's being used by companies around the world. Marcus Blackwood thought he could take what was mine and get away with it. He was wrong. In the end, his greed and arrogance became the weapons I used to destroy him. He taught me that in the corporate world, you have to be willing to fight for what you believe in, even if it means risking everything. Some people might say that what I did was ruthless or vindictive. They might argue that I should have handled the situation through proper channels or simply accepted the injustice and moved on. But those people have never had their life's work stolen from them. They've never felt the humiliation of watching someone else take credit for their ideas and innovations. I sleep well at night knowing that Marcus Blackwood will never again be able to steal from another ambitious employee. I've made sure of that. And if anyone else tries to take what's mine, they'll discover that I'm not the naive analyst I once was. I'm a CEO who knows exactly how to protect her interests and destroy her enemies. The corporate world is full of sharks like Marcus Blackwood. But they should remember that sometimes the fish they're trying to eat turns out to be a bigger shark. I've learned to swim in these waters, and I've developed a taste for revenge that's best served exactly the way I like it, scorching hot and absolutely devastating. My story isn't just about getting back what was stolen from me, it's about proving that intelligence, determination, and strategic thinking can overcome any obstacle, even when that obstacle is a powerful CEO who thinks he's untouchable. Marcus Blackwood learned too late that some people are willing to burn down the entire system to get justice. And I would do it all again in a heartbeat.